Do you want to draft the best pass-catching running back in this year's rookie class? Look no further than James Cook. And did I mention he's Dalvin Cook's little brother? But buyer beware, there's some major question marks in his profile that make it a riskier pick than you might think. So let's dig into the tape so that when you're on the clock, you know exactly who you're drafting. Let's start with the things that make James Cook an extremely enticing prospect. First, he's got great speed and acceleration. When the O-line opens up a hole, he explodes through it. It seems to take him almost no time at all to get up to top speed, and defenders are frequently left diving at him. Once he gets to green field, he's very hard to run down. He's a home run threat every single time he touches the ball. Second, he's got excellent elusiveness. He can change directions on a dime and accelerate out of a hard cut. He's got efficient footwork in traffic, and he's able to dart around slower defenders with good short area quickness. He can also be very hard to get a hand on when he gets the ball out in space. Finally, he's got amazing ability as a pass catcher. I know a running back is a truly special pass catcher when he can move out wide and run wide receiver routes. Watch James Cook run this angle route to perfection. He's heading outside like it's a simple out route and he's going to be the quarterback's check down. But then he violently cuts inside. The linebacker checking him has no chance whatsoever, and that's going to be a theme here. This time Cook is lined up out wide. He gives a nice little stutter step to freeze his man, and then he turns on the jets. Touchdown. Linebackers stand absolutely no chance against Cook in coverage, and even safeties have a hard time. This presents all kinds of problems for a defense. Running backs with this skill set can be moved all over the field, almost like a queen in chess. They're an offensive coordinator's best friend. And of course, with most Dynasty leagues using PPR scoring, a running back who's catching lots of passes can be a cheat code for your fantasy team in a lot of ways. Now that I've got you salivating though, let's talk about the question marks in Cook's profile. First of all, he's pretty small. He measured in at 5'11" and 199 pounds at the combine. This isn't a deal breaker as he can always add more weight once he gets into the league. To give a few examples, Christian McCaffrey came into the league at 5'11" and 202. He's certainly bulked up since then. And Austin Eckler, another excellent pass-catching back, weighed in around 199 pounds as well. He's also put on weight since he got into the league. So that's going to be something to monitor for Cook going forward. One thing to note is that both of those players I just mentioned would be absolute ceiling comps for Cook. And I think they're both better players, especially in the two areas that I'm about to talk about. But the point I'm trying to make is that his pass-catching chops at least gives him a chance to succeed in the NFL despite his size, particularly if he's able to put on weight. But that doesn't mean it's not an issue. Okay, so what are those two weaknesses that I just alluded to? Well, there's two ways that I see his lack of size and strength show up on film. The first is his power and contact balance as a runner. Being blunt, it's horrendous. I mentioned earlier that because of his elusiveness and speed, he can be very hard to get your hands on. But once a defender did get his hands on him, it was game over. I studied 12 full games of film for Cook, and I almost never saw him break a tackle, no matter how glancing the blow was. Not only was he not breaking tackles, he wasn't pushing the pile, he wasn't falling forward for extra yards. A defender would get an arm on him, and he'd almost immediately get ragdolled to the ground, over and over and over again. I also saw multiple times on film where he could have had a first down, positive yardage, or even a touchdown just by cutting it upfield and lowering his pads. But instead he tried to bounce it to the outside and ended up getting tackled for a loss. It's nice to be a home run threat, but we know that home runs happen on a very small percentage of plays. Most of the time, a running back's job is to grind for those few positive yards to keep the offense ahead of the chains. And I have a hard time seeing Cook ever being able to do that. The second major weakness I see in his game is pass protection. Again, being blunt, it's absolutely horrendous. Not only was he frequently bulldozed because of his lack of strength, he also lacked awareness and often missed assignments entirely. This is a huge deal for Cook in particular because all of his upside is tied to his pass catching ability. And if you can't be trusted in pass protection, then you can't be on the field in obvious passing situations. You might think, well, just don't ask him to pass block then. Play to his strengths. Send him out to catch passes instead. But the reality is that when Josh Allen is reading the defense on the field, if he identifies a blitz, he's gonna audible and ask his back to stay in and pick up that blitz to buy him an extra second or two to get the ball off. And if James Cook can't be trusted to do that, his coaches won't put him on the field. The last thing they want is their franchise quarterback getting blown up by an unblocked rusher. A third down back who can't be on the field for third downs is worthless. So on the positive side, Cook got drafted to one of the highest scoring offenses in the NFL. And with second round draft capital, you'd expect that they have a plan to use him. As the best pass catching back in the class, he could have major upside in PPR leagues. And he's an explosive runner in space. But on the flip side, the Bills were bottom 10 in the league last year in terms of running back targets. And the coaching staff has already indicated that they intend to use James Cook as part of a committee.
We see his best skill set as a sub back.
Because of his lack of size and power, it's doubtful that he gets a ton of carries, especially in the red zone. This would majorly limit his upside and leave him totally dependent on catching a ton of passes for his fantasy value. He won't be able to do that either if he can't improve his pass protection to a level that allows him to be trusted on the field as a true third down back. His effectiveness is ultimately going to be determined by how his team uses him. In the absolute best case scenario, you could be looking at an Austin Eckler type of fantasy ceiling. In the worst case, his pass pro lands him in the doghouse and he ends up being a bust. I think the most likely outcome is somewhere in between, where he's a Nyheim Hines, J.D. McKissic type who certainly has a role to play in the NFL and on your fantasy team, but the upside is very limited due to his lack of work between the tackles.
We really liked his skill set, similar to the one we saw, with McKissic.
His ADP is late first round right now in rookie drafts, and that's a little higher than I'd be willing to take him. But if he falls to anywhere in the second round in your draft, I'm definitely in at that price. So let me know down in the comments where you'd feel comfortable taking James Cook. I appreciate you watching, and if you want to see more rookie breakdowns, check out this playlist right here, and I'll see you there.